Daf Vav Amud Beis. We start at the top there. We mentioned this last week, but let's just go back to this. If you remember, Omar Rava, we spent time looking at that. Daf Vav Amud Beis, third line down on the Amud Beis. Omar Rava, Kiven Sha'obro Olov Gimel Regolim B'chol Yom V'Yom Over B'Bal Ta'acher. At the moment, we're discussing here B'Bal Ta'acher, which in simple terms, we've spent a lot of time on this one, Daf Vav. We're talking, in the main, we're talking about Korbanos, although it does cover a variety of things. But in particular, we're talking about Korbanos. And we spoke about remember the Pasuk, Lo Sa'acher L'Shalmo, don't delay paying up your due, which means if you made a korban, you said this is going to be a shlomim, you have a certain amount of time to make sure that it is actually brought. And remember, we learned there was 5-way machlokas about how long actually you've got your lo sa'acher. And in the main, our Mishnah, remember, held it was three Yom Tovim. You have three, how they learn it out, lots of psukim and limudim. So according to our Mishnah, it was 3 Yom Tovim. You have 3 Yom Tovim. And in fact, it must be in that sequence, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. That was our Mishnah. Although there are other views, and we actually paskin, the Rambam paskins like one of the other views, that in fact it's just 3 Yomim Tovim, and the sequence isn't important, it's 3 Yomim Tovim. The Rava says, and we discussed this last week, but we've got a question on it this week, Omer Rava, 3 lines down, Vavam and base, Kiven Sha'ovra Olov Gimel Regolim, once the Gimel Regolim have actually passed, it's assuming we're into the Gimel Regolim mode. Yes, over B'Bal Ta'acher, but not just that, B'chol Yom V'Yom over B'Bal Ta'acher. Every single day, we spoke about this last week, every day you're over B'Bal Ta'acher. And when we spoke about this and the various Meforshim we looked at, and the basic, according to the Meiri, was because every night you can't bring korbanos. As you can't bring a korban at night, in the morning, I remember, Simon, you were suggesting maybe it's the same Avera carrying on. What the Chiddush of Rava is, no, this is a new Avera every single day, compared to, if you remember, Lo Solin, for example, if someone must pay up his workers, there's one Avera, but it does not renew itself every day, because it is an ongoing Avera, and there's no break in between. That was the view of Rava. I say we discussed it last week. The Gemara, however, asks a question, Meisvei, 5 lines down. Meisvei, this is the Tosefta. The Tosefta says, and note, there's no mention here, well, we'll see in a minute, about the ongoing every single day new Avera. Echad B'chor, whether you're talking about a B'chor, ve'echad kol HaKodshim, or any of the Korbanos, Kodshim, Kiven she'ovru aleim shona below Golim, and this is going to be quite tricky, so hold on. If over a year has passed without the Yomim Tovim, without all 3 Yomim Tovim, don't jump, what does that mean? We'll see in a minute. Or the Regolim have passed without a year, you've had the 3 Yomim Tovim, but a complete year has not passed. Now, that's an easy one. In other words, you made the neder, imagine you said this is going to be a Shlomim just prior to Pesach. Then, of course, even if you have 3 Yom Tovim, you can have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. By the time you get to just beyond Sukkot, you haven't got a year yet. So that's clear. But it's either way. We'll get to that in a minute. Over B'Bal Ta'acher. A person then falls foul of the Avera of Bal Ta'acher. Tosfos picks up that Echad B'Chor, Echad Kol HaKodshim, Tosfos, the second Tosfos picks up. Why do we mention, we say Kol HaKodshim, just stop and Kol HaKodshim. Yeah? You don't need to say B'chor and all the Kodshim, because B'chor is one of the Korbanos. But however, explains Tosfos, the Pasuk actually says, the trouble with the gears of this Tosfos, because the Pasuk does say, Shona v'Shona. The word Shona v'Shona, which comes to tell me you've only got a year, is specifically mentioned regarding a B'chor. People may be familiar with the laning, Kol HaB'chor. We won't have a quick rendition now, but Kol HaB'chor, the end of Yom Tov, the laning Kol HaB'chor, it says there, Shona v'Shona, it should be eaten in a year. And the Gemara actually learns out also, it says Kol HaB'chor, the word Kol comes to include other Korbanos too. So that's why we specifically mention B'chor. And what are we saying? that whether it's a Bechor or any other Korban, the year is very important. Besides what we've been learning until now, this Bal Ta'ach, and we spoke about the Yom Tovim and how long you've got, there's another particular halacha, which is there is a year, a limit of a year. So the Gemara will have to explain more about this price in a minute, but for the main purposes why we're bringing this is because this seems to be, or is it? Is this in conflict with what we've seen according to Rava? Explains that. So what have we learned here? The Brisa says all korbanos, once a year has passed without regolim even, or regolim without the year, over babal ta'acher. Explains the Gemara. Behind my tiyufta, what's the kasha from this Brisa? There's no discussion about every single day. So what's the question? Right? So this Gemara has been brought as a meisvei, a question against the view of Rava. Rava says every single day. The Brisa doesn't actually mention every single day. Explains the Gemara. Omer Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana explains, I'll tell you what the question is. Man the Kamoisiv, whoever it was, the Amora who was bringing this Tosefta as a question against Rava, Shapir Kamoisiv. It's a good question. Explains the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Michte Tana Alada Komahade. This Tana of this Tosefta seems to be extending what we've seen in the Mishnah about Bal Ta'acher, it depends how many Yom Tovim, and bringing in a new concept, the concept of the year. Once you've got a complete year, so it looks like this Tosefta is looking for all occasions, yeah. It's searching, looking for other ways. Always looking nice to look for further ways of being over the Avera. The Tosefta is looking for ways on top of what we've seen in the Mishnah. In which case, says the Gemara, B'chol yom v'yom over babal ta'acher. Why doesn't it mean? The beginning of line listening b'chol yom v'yom over babal ta'acher. Why doesn't this Tosefta also mention you, Rava? You are Moira Rava. You seem to be you are of the opinion that not only the Yom Tovim are crucial in the Aveira Bal Ta'acher, but the year as well. Once you've passed the year, we're looking for further ways to be over this Aveira of Bal Ta'acher. Why didn't the Brisa mention every single day as well? Fair question. The Idach, what about Rava himself? How would he answer up that question? Why is this Brisa not a question against his view? And his view was every single day. Very simple. Tona lemikvoi balav komahade. It's looking for ways to be over the Avera, not balav yesera lo komahade. It's not discussing extra Averas every single day. The Avera comes back. That's a separate point, a nice point, but this Tosefta is not mentioning that. The Tosefta is only saying when is the trigger for this Avera of Bal Ta'acher. So therefore this Tosefta brings another occasion, which is the year rule. Not just the 3 regolim, it's also the overall the year. If you had regolim without a year or a year without regolim, we'll see in a minute what that means, you're also falling foul of Bal Ta'acher. But it's not searching and telling us that in fact that same Avera would come back every single day. That is not the point of this Tosefta. Have a look at Rashi. Rashi immediately jumps in there on the second line where the Tosefta said Shona, a year without regolim, and Rashi said, don't worry, lekamei mafarish. Lekamei meaning later on. Now, what's the difference between lekamon and lekamei? Anybody familiar with that? We've mentioned this before. Lekamon is normally much later on. Lekamei is immediately following, and of course it's going to be mentioned immediately. So worth remembering that if it ever comes up in Rashi, lekamei normally means very soon. Now, a couple of lines you're going to have this question. So Rashi just telling us that lekamei mafarish, don't get worked up what this means, because the Gemara itself very soon will come back and explain what this means. Explain the next Rashi, lemikvei balav komahade. the question was, it looked like this Tosefta was trying to lahudiacho kol sides man hascholas bal ta'acher sheboy. That's how Rava will answer. Rava will answer, it's coming to explain ways Lemikve, to tell us when this Aveira of Bal Ta'acher will commence. It's not just the 3 Yom Tovim, it's also the year rule. Next Rashi, 4 lines down, Alavi Yasera Lo Mahadabin. It's not searching and trying to look for Lo Diacho, says Rashi, Lavin Harbe Shabbai. The fact that it's very severe because it's every single day another Aveira, as opposed to, we spoke about this last week, as opposed to Lo Solin, paying up workers. Yes, it's an Avera and very severe, should be paid immediately, and you've got the moral issues and everything else, but it's not a new Avera on every occasion. That is not what this Tosefta is discussing. It's just discussing the start, the point at which the Avera starts, and therefore no question against Rava. Now, as Rashi has already told us, look at the next piece of Gemara, and says the Gemara, in mine, I've got a full stop. Beginning of the line is lo comma hader. We okay with that? Lo comma hader in the Gemara. Says the Gemara gufa, and we are familiar with this term gufa. We have it so many times. Gufa normally means let's get to the what should we say, the bones. Let's get to the kishkas of this, the guf of the matter. Something which we've mentioned before, and we brought this to Sefta as a question against Rava. Let's analyze this a little bit more, or a lot more. What is this all about? Says the Gemara Gufa. Echad b'chor, ve'echad kol hakodshim. We just saw that. Kiven she'ovru aleim shana below regolim. If a year passes by without having all the regolim, what does it mean? They cancelled Yom Tov that year? I mean, what does it mean? How can you have a year without the regolim? Okay. Or regolim below shana, you have all the regolim, but you haven't had a complete year. Over babal ta'acher. That was the Tosefta. Person falls foul of this Avera of Bal Ta'acher, which is talking about delaying. Says the Gemara, now part of this I can understand, but part of it I can't. Bishlama, the second part, which was a regolim below shana, it's possible to fall foul of the Avera of Bal Ta'acher if you had Yom Tovim, but you didn't have a complete year. How is it possible to have the Sholosh Regolim without a year? That's very simple, says the Gemara. Mishkachaslo. Of course, you can find that. In fact, we mentioned earlier occasions, if you remember, and unfortunately explain here. Obviously, if you made the person makes the neder just before, for example, just before Pesach. Very simple. You've got your Sholosh Regolim, but you haven't yet completed. You're not back into Nisan. In fact, the person already would have. Once it's gone beyond Sukkot, you've lost out. Okay. So, I can understand that. In fact, it doesn't even have to be in sequence. It can be out of sequence. In other words, any 3, remember there was one view that held it was just 3 regolim. It doesn't have to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Remember, one of the 5 views. So again, you can have the 3 Yom Tovim, but you haven't yet completed a year. That I can understand, and that's what we've been learning until now. So that's fine. Says the Gemara, Elo shana below regolim, heiche mishkachaslo. How is it possible to have a year, a complete year, without this all the sholish regolim? Heiche mishkachaslo. Okay. Yes. Says the Gemara, Ponicha, that's all very well, Laman de Isra Kasidron. I can understand now how the year will come in even without the Sholish Regolim. What does that mean? If you hold as we said, our Mishnah held, and if you remember, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, he said that it's got to be Kasidron. Remember, we had lots of psukim about this? The order of Baal Ta'acher has to start with a Pesach. Remember, that's why it's called Rosh Hashanah, as we explained in the Mishnah. It's Rosh Hashanah, the Regolim for Baal Ta'acher. What does that mean? According to Reb Shimon, if a person made a neder just before Pesach, he would have until the end of Sukkot. If he made the neder in Iyar, how long would he have? In fact, he would have Shavuos, Sukkot, and then Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. You with me? Because Reb Shimon holds the Aveira Baal Ta'acher, as I learned from Psukim, we've learned before, it's got to be Kasidron. It's got to be in the correct order. You cannot have Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos. It's got to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. So if a person made a neder just in the summer, he would have Sukkot plus Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Remember? So, if you hold like this Reb Shimon, Mishkachas law, you can then find that you can, according to, if you just strictly took the rule of Reb Shimon, you'd have to wait. A person makes a neder, let's say, in Iyar. Here we are, Chudish Iyar. A person makes a neder, he's going to bring a korban. Shlomim, Lamashal. According to Reb Shimon in our Mishnah, how long would it take to fall foul of the Aveira of Baal Ta'acher? A person makes a neder now in Iyar, he would have Shavuos, Sukkot, and then Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, which means he'd had 5 Yom Tovim. So out of the rule of it's got to be Kasidron, the year would come in first. This Tosefta telling us about the rule of the year means, although he made the neder in Iyar, when he gets to next Iyar, he would have fallen foul of Baal Ta'acher. You with me? Yeah.
Yes, that goes against the Man Da'ama who holds that it's got to start with Pesach, because why would it be over Baal Ta'acher?
Very good. Look at Rashi. Look at Rashi. Honicha Laman, first narrow line of Rashi. Honicha Laman the boy Kasidron. According to the view that it's got to be Kasidron, Mishkachas law, I can then find it's possible to have a year without having the 3 Yom Tovim Kasidron. Explains Rashi, this is, I think, an answer to your question. The of Rosh Hashanah, a year can pass below Ovru Regolim Kasidron. Right, carry on. So you'll tell me, excuse me, we learned, according to Rab Shimon, go back to Daf Daled Omid Aleph, right at the bottom of Daf Daled Omid Aleph. What did Rab Shimon say? When would you fall foul of the Aveira Baal Ta'acher? Look at the bottom Gemara there, a couple of lines up. Rab Shimon Omer, 4 lines up. Have you got it? Daf Daled Omid Aleph. Rab Shimon Omer, Gimel Regolim Kasidron, V'chag hamatzos techila. Fine, but look at the next bit. V'chein hoya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai omer. Sounds like another brisa. Regolim pa'omim. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5. So we see the view of Rab Shimon is that it's got to be considered. What do you mean sometimes 3, 4, 5? If the person made the neder in the winter, then you'd have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. If he made the neder in the summer, you'd have Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. If he made the neder in Iyar, he'd have Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. There's no mention there about the year rule. Look at our Rashi. V'limedcha, have you got it? Third narrow line of Rashi. V'limedcha, that's what this price is telling us. The kivan da of Rosh Hashanah, even once the year has passed, afal pishelo ovru regolim kasidron, even though they haven't fallen in correct sequence, chayev. So Simon said, what do you mean? Reb Shimon said it's 3, 4, 5. He didn't say 3 or a year. Says Rashi, the Sova law, this Tana of this Tosefta holds, Reb Shimon b'choda. In one way, he holds like Reb Shimon, meaning it's Kasidron. The Kasidron rule takes place, which means if I've got a Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot in that order, I could have made the neder, let's say, in the beginning of Nisan. Once I've got Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, I'm out. Or I get the cross, if you like. Continue on, Upali Goler B'choda, but he disagrees with him in one way. What? Rab Shimon says it's got to be considered. I'm not interested in this year rule. Says the Talmud of the Mishnah, I hold like you, Rab Shimon, that the 3 to be over the Avera, if you're looking at the 3 regolim, it would have to be 3 regolim Kasidron. With me? You cannot have Sukkot, Pesach, and then Shavuos. Even though I've got 3 regolim, that's fine. But I disagree with you with one point. You said it's got to be Sholish regolim Kasidron, and you don't hold the 1 year rule. Says the Tana of this Tosefta, I hold of the year rule. I've got a posuk. I learned it as Tosfos mentioned. I've learned it from the psukim of Kol HaBechor. He says there's Shana, and just like it applies to a Bechor, it applies to all the Kabbalas. So do you understand, Simon? So what we're saying here, therefore, is the Tana of this Tosefta holds partly like Rab Shimon. Somebody's trying to speak, I think, or on not on mute. Somebody not on mute? Okay. Peter, you can probably see. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. Good. So what we're saying, therefore, is this Tosefta will fit in very nicely if it held the year rule on top of the rule of Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says it's got to be Kasidron. Right? So therefore, adding to that, that's the Tosefta, from Psukim, there's an additional rule, which is the 1 year rule, which means sometimes it can happen that the 1 year will come in before you've got your 3 Yom Tovim Kasidron. For example, a person making an Eder now in Iyar, what will come first? The year will come first. Next year, Iyar will come before you've got your Kasidron of a Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, because Pesach is already passed.
So you're saying it's the earlier of.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the Tosefta is saying. It's the earlier of a year or 3 Yomim Tovim, only Kasidron. Because if it's not Kasidron and it's any 3, and there was a view like that, in fact, we paskin like that. If it's any 3, it's like, any 3 permutation, back to the old pools, you're choosing, people remember some of that. So if you're choosing any 3 Yom Tovim, and it's any 3, then of course that will happen before you get the year. With me? And that's exactly what the Gemara is now going to ask. So the Gemara started off by saying, Honicho, it's fine if the Tosefta held like Rab Shimon in part, and all they're doing is adding an additional facet to this rule of the 3 Kasidron. You with me? Then it fits. Back to our Gemara. Honich leman the Islay, beginning of line, lay Kasidron. Mishkachas law. We can find it. Ela leman de leslay Kasidron. If you don't hold Kasidron, heichi mishkachas lo. How is this going to work? How are you going to find the case? Now, this is very important. Why is it so important? Because, in fact, we do paskin 3. And it's any 3. In which case, are you telling me, therefore, the Tana of this Braisa, the Tana of this Tosefta, is moving on the side of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, which means it's got to be Kasidron, and on top of that, he's got the rule of the year. What are you going to do? And we would expect somebody not to hold the view of Rab Shimon. We paskin 3, any 3. If that's the case, if it is any 3, then of course, once you've got your 3 regolim, that will always be less than a year. People happy with that? How can you have 3 regalim passing in any order, a Shavuos, a Sukkot, and a Pesach? Once you've got to the end of Pesach, you've got your 3 regalim. So you're never going to get to a year first. What is the point of telling me this rule of a year? So you'll have to say that this price and then this Tosefta is following the view of Reb Shimon. Okay, if you're pushed against the wall, you'd have to say that. But it would be nice to say that this Tosefta will fit in even according to the other view. Yeah, people happy with that? Okay, on we go. This is a bit like one of these decision trees. Remember the oldest going down the decision trees? So we picked that off. Says the Gemara, even if we're following Reb Shimon, we have still got a way out of this. Says the Gemara, Bishloima Rebbe. That's all very good. It will fit in according to Rebbe. The Tosefta can have a year without 3 regalim if, agreeing with the view of Rebbe, the great Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, what are we talking about here? Mishkachas lo, then you will find it b'shana mu'uberes. If you've got a leap year, and we'll have to see the view of Rebbe in a minute, how will that come in? Because normally a leap year, how's that going to work? I mean, with Yom Tov, we'll see in a minute. Mishlachas lo b'shana mu'uberes. If you had a leap year, how does it work? Now, we know about leap years. Of course, you know all about leap years. We've been through this lots of times, yeah? You know how many? 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19. Remember 7 out of 19 years? Yeah, we know all about that. Yeah, 7 out of 19 years. And I'm sure I've shown you the tour that brings it. In case you like charts, there's a wonderful chart at the end. We always talk about 19-year cycles, don't we? I'm sure everybody does everywhere. Even in Manhattan, they keep talking about 19-year cycles. Yeah, you've got the 19-year cycle, and that's to tell you when the leap years fall. 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19, they're the leap years. But in fact, it's not just one cycle of 19. We've been through this. There are 13 cycles of 19. What do I mean by that? It's true. Every cycle of 19 has those years where there will be the leap year. Yeah, the Shana Mu'uberes. That's according to our calendar. Yeah, that's according to Hillel II. However, it doesn't allow for the fact that Cheshvan and Kislev can be either Casidron. What do I mean by Casidron? 30, 29. They can both be 29, Choser. They can both be Mole. And in those sequence, the 19-year cycles, each one of them are slightly different in let's say year 8 is not always the same as far as Cheshvan and Kislev are going. You with me? So what I mean by this is, although we've got the calendar 19-year, there are 13. So 13 times 19, 247 is the complete cycle of years that we've got. Yeah. So that's the year 247. Maybe we'll come back to that in a moment. Quite a fascinating point on that. Yeah, so we're talking, that's what we've got now when we've got leap years, of course, fixed according to the calendar of Hillel II. But even before that, it doesn't matter. You could have a leap year. And what's special about a leap year says...
Sorry, Norman.
Yes.
For those,
Hello.
I'm not sure our musicians, I remember you had a musical aid memoir for
yes.
years.
You know that we haven't got any musicians here in the crowd.
Is Malcolm here?
Sorry,
Malcolm with us?
No.
All right.
Who have we got here? We've got quite a few people here. I don't think we got Malcolm.
3 clarinet with merit.
You did?
Grade 3 clarinet with merit.
Oh wow, that great stuff. Great stuff. So, you know, yeah, it's true, actually. It's very interesting. If you're into music, let's take the major scale. The simplest one, of course, is C major. This is very simple. Mr. Marr will be proud of us all mentioning him here, mentioning some music. Remember major C. Remember it goes the major scale goes C, D, E, F, G, yeah, up to C again, and it goes the major. How does the major scale go? Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. If we're into it, C to D, D to E, E to F. There's no sharp in between. I may have lost a lot of people here, but the musicians not. It's tone, tone, semitone. So in other words, if you include the note and the next note in the tone, you've got C to D is 3 notes. C, C sharp, D, 3. Yeah. So it's 3. Then D to E is 3 notes, 3, 3, and then 2 notes going E to F. Yeah, do, re, yeah, C, D, D, E, E, F. So it's 3, 3, 2, then 3, 3, 3, 2. And that's the same sequence, actually, to take it as you like, the same sequence, actually, of the 19-year cycle. It's 3, after 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, 19. Where I picked this up from, don't tell me, somebody just once came to, I don't know who he is. We had a visitor and he told us this. I don't know who the fellow is. I don't know his name. But he just mentioned this. A good way to remember it all is the 332, 3332. So please remember that in case you're ever stuck in one of these quizzes that you need to get the answer to that. So back to our case, the Sanya. Shana Tamima. A complete year. What's Shana Tamima mean? This is a posuk. Those people who have got the Mark edition of the Gemara, where it mentions the posuk. This is the posuk coming up in Parshas Bahar. It says, when it's talking about Bote Ori Choima. Now we got Charles with us. Hope we have. Oh yes, away from Charles. Thank you, Charles. Because as of course you know, I'm sure we can give a share on the subject because Mishnah Yomis had just finished Eirchin, and at the end of Eirchin it talks about the Bote Orei Choima. I'm sure Charles will remember that well. Tricky little piece there, Eirchin. That's the 2 Mishnahs a day, which just started Tamura. But as Charles will remember, we just finished Eirchin, and in Eirchin it talks about the psukim of Bote Orei Choima. What is Bote Orei Choima? Coming up in the end of Parshas Bahar, it mentions about redeeming fields. People sell their fields. It's a property, a family property. They sell their property. Remember, they redeem it, and if they don't redeem it, what will happen? It will come back at Yovel, right? Bote Orei Choima, which are houses. I'm looking here at my Yikra, Perik Hofhei, Posuk Hoftes. Someone who sells houses in Ir Choima, a walled city, right? He's got 1 year to redeem it. That's all. More than that, V'im lo yigoel, if he doesn't redeem it, that's what we want here, this complete year. Then you know what happens to that land? Interesting word there, loy aleph navav, it's a Greek zip. But anyway, latzmisus, perpetuity. The rule is that this land, the bote, the house in the walled city, will remain forever in perpetuity. Latzmisus. The person who purchased it forever, generations, passes down, unless he sells it as well. Lo yedse hayovel, exception to the general rule. This does not go back in Yovel. Very interesting. Normally everything goes back in Yovel, and normally you have much more time to be able to redeem property. Here you've got this 1 year. If the year's up, you've lost your chance to redeem back your property. It will remain with the purchaser forever and a day. Interesting, that rule. There's a very interesting Meshech Chochmah on that. Why should it be? Normally, we always have we like family property. We like property remaining in the ownership of the family, generations, etc. We've got all the different shvatim. Why is it with the case of the Bote Ir Choima? He says the following. You can look it up, Mervin and Meshech Chochmah. Yitochen tam ktsas. I can give you a little bit of a reason, he says, Meshech Chochmah. The Ore are these the cities, the Bote Orechoma that had walls around them. They were the cities Hamiginim Mipnei Ha'oyev. They're especially in that way. They are meant to be the protection for against enemies. If there's going to be a motzo, if there's going to be some type of siege, they're in a very good position. They are right at the front, and it's crucial. They've got this wall around them. They're acting as the shield and the protection for Klal Yisrael. The Gemara mentioned in the Megillah. Listen to this. If the rule was the bayis be'ir, a house in such a city with a wall around it, would go back in Yovel. Imagine the difference the day before Yovel, the day after Yovel. In the 50 years, you could have a lot of people buying, selling. In the year of Yovel, everything goes back to the original owner. They'll all be new people, haven't been living there for a long while, maybe up to 50 years. They don't recognize everybody. People don't recognize the new people moved in. Under those circumstances, it will be very easy for somebody else to come in, and you won't know whether he's actually just moved in because it's his property next door, or maybe he's just managed to come in, one of the enemies just managed to creep in, and he won't be noticed. There's no kesher between all the people. At 50 years, everything's new. They don't recognize anybody. We want them to have this strength, and they've got to remain together so that they would notice any person coming. That would be good for Peter. Anybody will be coming through without the security going through. We want to ensure that that doesn't happen. You've got a year to buy it back. Yes. It's chalutin, which means it belongs to that purchaser forever. So a very beautiful reason. He says there that's a tam katsas why we have this rule of the bote orechoma. Let's go back to the bote orechoma. What's this got to do with us? Says the Gemara de Sanya. The pasuk there says you've got shana samima. Yeah. To buy it back, you've got 1 year. And it says Shana Samima. Rebbe says this word, why don't you just say you've got a year to buy it back? What's Shana Tamima? Yeah, so that'd be Shana Tamima. It's perfect. What's perfect about it? Rebbe says this is a big chiddush. The pasuk here is telling us, once it tells you this word Shana, and now with the word Tamima, and indeed, Rabbi Yehuda, Rebbe, this Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, learns from this rule anywhere where it's going to say the word Shana. Interesting, he learns from here, Memotzinu. Moine Shalosh Meus Veshishim V'Chamisha Yoim. Normally, if you say a year, you talk about someone's yortzeit, obviously it's on that anniversary of that date. The pasuk here says Shana Tamima. You're given a little bit longer than that. A year, according to in the lunar calendar, as we explained, is 354 days. Yeah, the time it takes for the moon, to go round the Earth 12 times is 354. Of course, the solar is 365 plus the quarter, but 365, it's 11 days short. The lunar year is 11 days short from the solar year. That's, of course, why you need a leap year. So what? Says Rebbe, this pasuk's telling us it's a Shana Tamima. As a seller, you have a complete year to buy it back. If you come back 1 year later, 354, the anniversary of that date, Rosh Chodesh Nisan to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Rabbi Yehuda said, I've got a few more days, I've got 11 more days to be able to repurchase that property. Keminyan Yomos Hachama. Okay, so stop there. If you've got, therefore, a complete year, meaning 365 days, okay, carry on. Chachomim omrim moine yud beis chodesh miyom liyom. You count yud beis chodesh miyom liyom, that's the Chachomim, 12 like normal, but this is a crucial part. You know what Tamima tells us? Vim nisabra shana nisabra loy. He's got a little bit more. In those leap years we spoke about, not only has he got 12 months, he's got 13 months. So that's very interesting. What we're learning from here is, have a look at Rashi. Bishloma l'Rebbe, it's all very good according to Rebbe. What do you mean it's good according to Rebbe? Have a look at Rashi. Bishloma l'Rebbe, de'oma chodesh ho'iba eino min hashana. What would be the difference between Rebbe and the Chachomim if in fact it is a leap year? How much time that we know the Chachomim would say you've got the whole extra month. According to Rebbe, how much of that extra month would you have? Don't all jump. According to Rebbe, it's a solar year you've got. So therefore, if it's a leap year, look at Rashi.
You have 11 days.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much, sir. Have a look at Rashi. Bishloma l'Rebbe, says Rashi, de'oma chodesh ho'iba eino min hashana. A leap year doesn't count for this seller. Notice what Rashi says, as Anthony has pointed out, chutz miyud aleph yom, besides those 11 days, sheshnasa chama yisera al alavona, besides the 11 days that a solar year is longer than a leap year, than a normal lunar year, you'll have 11 days, that's all. Okay, brilliant. So what are we saying now? We're saying also, as explained in the Gemara then, Eirchin, the same rule applies here. What does that apply here mean? From this shana that you've got for the korbanos. Hello? Yeah, if from what you learn from the korbanos is the following. You've got a shana tamima. Have a look at the next Rashi, which is Huamura Babote Orechayma. Rashi is very clear. He's saying the shana that's written in Bote Orechayma, and actually the Tosfos mentions here, well, he says Pirush HaKundrus, V'hu 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Tosfos and down. He says V'hu adin b'chol shonim stam l'Rebbe. The Alfino mitzumima the Bote Orechayma. The Gemara learns that again from Erechin. The what? Wherever it says the word shana, and it does say shana when it comes to these korbanos. Remember shana with bechor and other korbanos too. It will be a what type of year? A solar year. Moina shin sam. Next Rashi. What do? We count 365 days. This is going back to the Bote Orechayma, for example. Look at the Rashi. Va'afilu b'shana pshuta. Even in a normal year, not when a non-leap year, you'd have 365 days rather than going on the anniversary. Carry on, Rashi. Even if indeed it is a leap year, the 365 plus the quarter. Once you've got the 365, from the time that he's actually sold it, nechlat loy means it's fixed with the purchaser and it will remain with him forever. But he's got those extra days. With me? Okay. Back to our Gemara. What's this miyom liyom? However, the Chachomim say you count 12 months miyom liyom. Next Rashi. For example, we were talking about Pesach before. From the 15th of this, not that someone would be buying and selling on the 15th, but we're talking about Pesach. Imagine it was the 15th of Nisan. It will go lachamisha also b'Nisan. Imochra b'tesva b'Nisan. It is very interesting why Rashi particularly chooses the 15th of Nisan. I know we're talking about Pesach, but that's pointed out by some of the Meforshim, why Rashi mentions 15th. But the idea is very simple, that if a person is buying something, you will always be given, the purchaser will be given 1 year, holding tight, hoping that the person wouldn't come back and then it's his forever. However, nisabro shona. Back to our Gemara, keep your finger on the place there. You count 12 months, miyom liyom. Okay. Then nisabro shona, nisabro loy. If the year is a leap year, it's a leap year for him. Who's the him here? Back to Rashi, nisabro loy lamoicher, for the seller. That's why it says shana tamima. You're given a complete year. What's a complete year meaning? Nisabro loy, you've got the extra month as well. So imagine you're going from 15th of Nisan to 15th of Nisan. You've got that extra month. Although in that case, it will be 13 months. Yeah, with me? Somebody's on, yeah? The al-kochoi, I'm finishing the Rashi there. The al-kochoi shel lokeach, against the will of the lokeach, eino nechlat, it's not fixed, belonging to the purchaser, ad sheyagia tesvav b'nisan. You with me? I might have thought that in a leap year, I've got my 12 months. I'm going from 15th of Nisan to the 15th of Odar Sheni. I've got my 12 months. No. It's a Shana Tamima. A Shana Tamima means even if there is a leap year, you will always have the anniversary date is the latest date that you've got to repurchase that property. With me? So, that's very nice in Bote Orechoma. How does that link to our example? Says our Gemara.
Sorry, Norman, the obvious...
Somebody's
on the phone.
Or you can always mute them. Yeah. Yes.
At the beginning, we said 3 regalim without a year or a year without 3 regalim.
Yes.
Obvious way to read that would be going, if you like, l'chumra, which you've got a leap year, and you go from the whatever the 5th of ER, and if you have 12 months, then then you haven't had enough time for 3 regalim.
Well, then you don't need to mention that. Clearly, the Tosefta is telling me an extra chumrah. This would not take a leniency.
So you're saying that you haven't. Sorry.
The price is echod kiven she'avrolim shana below regalim, or regalim below shana. It's not one plus the other one.
No, but shana. So regalim below shana is you've had 3 regalim in 6 months.
Yes, you're out.
You're out. A shana without regalim could be you've had 12 months in a 13-month year.
Right. You're right. You could have a 12-month in a... Now, the only trouble with that is we have a posuk here in Bote Erechoma, and there are 2 views. When we take a shana, we either take the shana as being a complete lunar year, which in that case will be 13 months. That's the view of the Chachomim. Or the shana means a solar year. We do not find in that machlokas anybody saying from there, and it's learned from the shana tamima.
But then even if you take a solar year, if you make your neder on Erev Sukkot, and you then have the next Sukkot is 385 days, 384 days.
Yes.
But after a year, it's 365 days. So if you go for a solar year.
Very good. That's the Gemara's answer according to Rebbe. Very good. Absolutely right. Look at the Gemara. Spot on. Says the Gemara, Moni, have you got it? Nisabro loy. I've got the line Nisabro loy in the Gemara. So again, let's take it a little bit earlier and get into this in one go. As remember, it's always the intonation which is crucial.
Sorry, and just as in Avelis, we have a year which is 12 months, even in a leap year.
But the Yod side, the Yod side is actually, of course, on the actual day, not the 12 months.
But the Avelis stops.
But the Avelis is 12 months, yeah? Although there you could say it's because it's Midrabanon, the actual Avelis are there more makel. But as far as the Torah is concerned, we don't find this principle of 12 months. It's either 13 or either 13 or the solar. That's the machlokus. But your point is mentioned. Let's go back a couple of lines where it says Kasidron. Let's get into this in the right intonation. Have you got it? Where it says Kasidron. It's all very good according to Rebbe. This is Anthony's point. Mishkachaslo. You can have an example if it was a leap year. Why? Desanya. Shona Tamima, that was word Shona Tamima in Boti or Ichima. Rebbe Oime Mona Shalosh Meos Vishishivacha Misha Yoim Kaminim Mosachama as a solar year. Right. All of that is in one breath. According to that, it will be very nice. Mishkachas Loru Rebbe. This is Anthony's point. According to Rebbe, you can have a year. What type of year? A year without the Sholosh Regalim. How can you get a year without the Sholosh? Sorry, yeah, you want a year and you haven't yet got the Sholosh Regalim. How do you have a year without the Sholosh Regalim? Have a look. The Agdishe Bosa Chagamatzis. Right? What's happened here? He makes it Hekdesh just after Pesach, right? The Chimota Shilhi Adar. Imagine this. When is the first day? Imagine Eretz Yisrael. The first day after Pesach. Pesach starts on the 15th. In Eretz Yisrael, the 22nd already will be the first day after Yom Tov, right? Imagine he made a neder on the 22nd of Nisan, right? Imagine it's a leap year. This is Anthony's point. What's going to happen now if he makes the neder after Pesach? When you've got the complete solar year, how many? That's the 365. When will the 365 days be up? Can we work that out? Yes, we can. Imagine you start after Pesach. So let's have a nice example. The 22nd of Nisan, right? We've got until, if you go up to Adar, let's take a normal lunar year, the 22nd of Adar Sheni, your 354 will be up. With me? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
22nd. You've got 11 more days to make up the end of the solar year. That's taken me out of Adar, but I haven't yet hit Pesach. So I haven't had a Pesach. You with me? We want an example of 3 Yomim Tovim not having passed, although a year has passed. So we say, according to Rebbe, you can have that. A year means a solar year. I've got my solar year, but I haven't had my 3 Yom Tovim. With me? And that's exactly what we're saying here. He makes it a hekdesh, or he makes it kodesh. He makes it's going to be a korban. Says Rashi, Bosa Chagamatzos, Dechimoti Shilhi Adar. When I get to the end of Adar, we'll see Rashi in a moment. Basro, the next one. Shona Malya Regolim Lo Molu. What's happened? I've got my year, my solar year, but I haven't got my Sholosh Regolim. You with me? So we've now worked out that our Tosefta could be the view of Rebbe. You with me? According to Rebbe, you can have a year without 3 Regolim. It means in a leap year, you've got a solar year. It's possible to have a solar year. Now, look at Rashi. Very interesting how the Rashi, very meduyik here, why Rashi is not over happy with the wording of the Gemara. Look at this Rashi. He makes a neder, bosa chagamatzis, after Pesach. Give me a date of after Pesach. 22nd is the first date I can think of after Pesach. 23rd in Chutz La'aretz. What happens now? We worked it out, didn't we? 22nd of Adar Sheni will be 354. You've got another 11 days. But what did the Gemara say? Go back to the Gemara. Have you got the line Chagamatzis? Have you got the word Chag HaMatzos? It says Chag HaMatzos, the Chimoti Shilhi Adar. Shilhi means tired, it means the end of. You often find a Shilhi. When you get to the end of Adar, you've already got your solar year. No, you haven't. If I start after Pesach, let's say the 22nd, which is the first day after Pesach, 365 days after that gets me into Nisan. It's not the end of Adar. With me? What? Yeah? So Rashi says this Bosa Chag HaMatzos. Now look what Rashi says there. Rashi says Bosa Chag HaMatzos means B'soich Horegel. We translated Acha Chag HaMatzos as you'd expect, being the 22nd. Rashi said you could interpret, it means after, the first day after Seder nights, sometime on Chol Hamoed. I know it's Dochuk, because the actual Gemara says he makes it after Chag HaMatzos. You with me? So Rashi's taking, look at this, Bosa Chag HaMatzos, he says, B'soich Horegel. Stop. Now, if it's B'soich Horegel, imagine it was, let's say, the 17th. Yeah? The 17th of Nisan, and during that he said, I want this animal, he said he's going to bring a shlomim, and it's the 17th. Then the 17th of Adar Sheni will be 354. At 11, I'm up to 28. I'm now still in Adar. You with me? Have I lost people here? If you make the neder in the middle of Yom Tov, let's say the 17th or the 18th of Nisan, 354 days, a lunar year, will take me up to the same date of Adar Sheni, because it's a leap year. With me, Anthony? Mm-hmm. So I'm up to 17, takes me up to 17, and then I've got 11 more days to equate the solar with the lunar year, and therefore I'll then end up in Shilhi Adar. I'm still in Adar. You see, clearly Rashi wants to say, how can I get this word Shilhi Adar? Go back to our Gemara.
It's not Dafka Shilhi Adar. I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? Anything up to the 14th of Nisan.
Well, very good, very good, very good. You are the second shitter of Rashi. Very good, spot on. So the first pshat of Rashi is concerned that it said Shilhi Adar. It sounds like it's the end of Adar. Says Rashi, the only way I can do that is when it says Chag HaMatzos, it doesn't mean right after Yom Tov. It means after the Seder night. And a lot of people say once Seder night's finished, you're on the way down. That's what it means, Chag HaMatzos. It means once the first day is finished, the first 2 days of Yom Tov are finished, he makes a neder, then I can still use the word Shilhi Adar. Now carry on, Simon, you're like this. The Ista Omri, you could, however, say, it does mean La'acha HaRegel. He makes this neder after the regel. What does it mean? I don't know, 25th of Nisan. But if it's the 25th or 22nd of Nisan, you aren't still, your 365 days are not going to be in Adar anymore. Remember, 22, once you've got 11 days, you've got beyond 30, you're in the next year, you're in the next Nisan. Says Tosin, this is Simon's point. V'shilhi Adar Basra, when the Gemara said the end of the next Adar, or actually means the second Adar, Adar Sheni, Lav Davka, it's exactly what Simon said. Doesn't mean Lav Davka. Ela Acha Sheyotza Adar, that's what Shilhi means. The end of Adar means beyond Adar. You with me?
So both words are inaccurate then. So Basar means...
Well, you're absolutely right.
Right. And Shilhi doesn't mean...
You're quite right. According to the first pshat, Chag HaMatzos doesn't mean after Yom Tov, it means after Seder. According to the second pshat, you're right. The second pshat says, when it says Shilhi Adar, it doesn't mean the end of Adar, it means when coming to the end, it means beyond Adar. You're right, it's not perfect, but that's the best we can do, and that's presumably why Rashi, in fact, there's one of the Purushim in the back explains that that's pshat in Rashi here, he's bringing both. So, having said all of that, that's just a diuk in Rashi. According to Rebbe, this was Anthony's point, according to Rebbe, if you can have a solar year, then our Tosefta, which says, Kivan she'ovru shana below regolim, you've done the Avera. Oh, right. You can sometimes have, according to this Tosefta, a year without Sholosh Regolim. We wondered how you're going to get that. You know how you get a year without Sholosh Regolim? You take a solar year, and in a solar year, you do not have, in a leap year, Sholosh Regolim necessarily. Okay? That's very nice according to Rebbe, and this is where we'll close. Says the Gemara, that's all very wide. I'm going back to the Gemara Chagamatzis. When I get to how you like to learn in Rashi, either the end of Adar or after Adar, Basra means Adar Sheni. Shona Malia, I've completed a year, but Regolim lo Molu. So now, we've now worked out that this Tosefta could work according to the view it says Sholosh Regolim means any three. According to Rebbe, who says when it says a shana for Balta Acher, learning from the Bote Orechoma will mean a solar year. I can have a solar year, rarely, but the posuk here with Bote Orechoma linked with the posuk of Kol Abchor. Remember, it says shana. It means you've got to eat it. You've got to be brought as a korban within 1 year, and sometimes the year will come before you've got the sholosh regolim. Says the Gemara, Ela Rabbanon. That's all very nice, but what about according to Rabbanon and Machlokes Rebbe? I know we normally do pasuk like Rebbe Mechaveirov, but not Rebbe Mechaveirov, which means we are going to pasuk like Chachomim. Which means what? In the case of the Bote Orechoma, if someone sells property in a Bote Orechoma and it's a leap year, we will give the seller the extra month. With me? So in a leap year, you will have 300, let's say 54 plus 30, keep it simple, you'll have 384 days. With me? Now, 384 days, says the Gemara Rabbanon, Heichi Mishkachas Lo. If you've got 384 days, and the same rule applying here with your year that we're talking about here for Balta Acher, there is no way you can have that 384 years without having your Sholosh Regolim. You can have 365, because 365 is less than the 380. The 384. You with me? If it was according to Rebbe, you can have 365 being less than a complete year, which is an Iber year. But you cannot have an Iber year by definition. An Iber year means and we're following that extra month, the extra lunar month, which means how can you possibly have a year going from one date to another date, and that's how long you've got. In that time, you must have had your Sholosh Regolim by definition. And you could say maybe you'll tell me maybe I started in the middle of Yom Tov. So what? When you get to the next Yom Tov on that anniversary, you've got your 3 Regolim. So you can't have. That's the Gemara's problem now. And leave it for next week. All being well.
The maximum number of days would be presumably from the 16th of Nisan, or even the 15th of Nisan, actually, to the 14th of Nisan. That would be the maximum number of days without shana.
But you're allowed a shana, whatever the shana is, but whenever the shana is up, then you've done the Avera. So whenever that time is up,
but
you've always got, by definition, you've got your Sholosh Regolim. You can't avoid having, if you go from any date to any date, you've always got the Sholosh Regolim. Even we mentioned the point before about the Tishri and Cheshvan, the Cheshvan and Kislev, where they're Molei Achosa. Ignore it. Just take the date. The 1st of Nisan to the 1st of Nisan, you've always got Sholosh Regolim. The 15th of Nisan to the 15th, the 18th of Nisan, 1st of Iyar, whatever date you like, you take 2 dates, you must have Sholosh Regolim. And that's the Gemara's question.
15th of Nisan, the 15th of Nisan to the 14th of Nisan with a leap year.
Well, no, you'll go 15 to 15.
No, 15th to the 14th would be the maximum days that would be possible to have a year without Sholosh Regolim, wouldn't it?
But you're allowed a year Up to a year you're allowed, and that's exactly the same amount of time as Sholosh Regalim. Up to the 15th is the same as my up to a year. Whenever you want to, even if you want to start it at nightfall of the 15th, I've got a complete number of years at nightfall of the 15th. It's true, one's going in the 14th to 15th. So I can never get a year without having Sholosh Regalim.
But according to why is that a problem? The Tosefta says, we're interested in the language of the Tosefta. We're interested in how Shana below Regalim can work. So the answer could be, and according to Rebbe, Shana below Regalim.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's why the Gemara says Mishkachas Lo. Do you remember before we said also with the Sholosh Regalim? Right. We said the same thing before with the Sholosh Regalim. If the Sholosh Regalim was Kasidron, but number one, we don't like that because we paskin not like Reb Shimon. And similarly here, you're right. If we had our back to the wall, you'd have to say that this Tosefta is following the view of Rebbe. We don't paskin
it doesn't even have to be following the view of Rebbe. They could be neutral on the machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachomim and say that when they use that language, it's according to Rebbe. That doesn't mean the Tosefta itself is always according to Rebbe.
Would be
just meaning
no.
this expression.
And I understand.
Applies to Rebbe.
I see. When the Gemara says in Erechin, whichever one of those sides you're holding, whether you're Rebbe or the Chachomim, it will carry through across to our example of Balta Acher. So if you're a Rebbe Yehuda man, then you'll have to do the same in Balta Acher. If you are a Chachomim man, or if you are the Chachomim, you'll have to do the same thing here. So the only way you can say that the Tosefta works is if the Tosefta was of the opinion that a Shana for Balta Acher is going to be like Rebbe.
I don't see that. If the Tosefta is entertaining the possibility of Rebbe, the Tosefta doesn't have to be saying it's definitely like Rebbe. It's saying, according to Rebbe, there's even a situation.
That's what the Gemara doesn't like. The Gemara does not like the Tosefta saying according to, it's just a statement. And wherever you find a Tosefta or a Mishnah or a Brisa, it must be by an individual or Rabbonim. Are these Rabbonim subscribing to the view of Rebbe or the Chachomim? That's all. You're right, you could be saying it's or this, maybe you'll say it's neither, but it's just according to Rebbe.
Either.
Fine.
I'm saying,
but
that language is just going to Rebbe.
You understand. What the Gemara doesn't like is why this Tosefta should have taken the view of Rebbe if we don't paskin like that. You're right. If we have no other answer for the Chachomim, that's why I say come back next week. If we have no answer for the Chachomim, our back will be against the wall. We'll have to say, I'm terribly sorry. This is a brisa which happens to be on the line of Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. But if we can get out of it in some way and not say that, that will be better. Although the answer is tricky, but we'll have to see what we can do. Yeah, so, yeah. We've got quite a nice number of people here. We'll have to close here. Anybody? So before we close, everybody's well? Peter well?
Just a רגע של עברית. In modern Hebrew, you say shilhei rather than shilhi. Yeah, and shilhei means the end of.
Yeah, why does it mean the end of? What does it really mean? What does it really mean? Doesn't shilhi really mean tired?
No, I think, well, its meaning is ending.
Yeah, but norm, b'shilhi, yeah, you're right. We use it to be the end of. You see, the problem with that, if strictly speaking, I think it does mean when a person gets tired, b'shilhi, you say the end of a perek. Shilhi, the actual literal translation. We'll come back to this, but whichever way it means, it's true. It does mean the ending, but you can't say it means here in our brisa the end of Adar. It's not going to be the end of Adar. It's going to be the beginning of Nisan. That's the problem. So I agree what you're saying, Simon. Your point is it means the end of, and we had a problem with that. You can't, and that's why Rashi, as I say, we've got some problems there. If it's going to be the after Pesach, it will not be the end of, you're right, it means the end of Adar. It's be the beginning of Nisan. Unless you say it's Lavdavka.
One other thing.
Simon. Simon, you happy with that?
Yeah, Sam, yeah.
Yeah, very good. So you're right, it does mean the ending, but you can't have an ending and be the beginning. Yeah.
Just one other thing. I think Gufa always introduces a citation.
Yes.
As it does here. So it's not so much we're referring back to something that was already said in the past.
Yes. Yeah, getting into the goof of the matter.
But specifically getting to a citation that we have in
the
past.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If that wasn't clear, absolutely. Yes, agreed. Yeah, we just mentioned it before, as we said, and that's why Rashi says Lakamei. This whole brisa will be explained a little bit later on. We were focusing on the machlok on Rava's point. The Gemara says Gufa. I'm now going back, you say, to the guts of a citation mentioned earlier. We're bringing it back to explain it in more detail. Yes. Okay. Everybody else said Joe. Joe Nyman's there. Nice to see Joe. Sylvain good. Malcolm Miller's with us. The musician's with us as well. Malcolm.
I had a question, but I'll keep it for next week if you want.
Oh no, come on, Malcolm, come on. No, it's just okay. I'm following roughly what you're talking about.
Right. Okay.
But the Shana, the word Shana, which seems to be the point of this
contention
or discussion point. Shana Malia. I mean, are there other cases in the not here necessarily in this Masechta where Shana is used in different senses? I mean, is it a bit like long term and short term at Oxford? You know, where they have a term and you have the long term and the short term.
Long term. No,
what is the concept? The year, the solar year. I thought that wasn't part of. In what cases is solar year taken for legal?
Yeah. What do you mean? When do you use the solar year?
Yeah.
No, according to that Tosfos brings here all year when it says we will learn from this Shana Tamima. Although it only says Tamima here in Bati Arachim, it will be a solar year. Generally, we don't adopt that, as we know. We always adopt the lunar year in all instances, and then you're back to if it is going to be a leap year, will that be included? But as we know, we don't follow that. We don't, and that's one of the main reasons we want to try and find a way of explaining this without utilizing the view of the solar year, because we don't often use a solar year. Rarely. Okay. Anybody else?